Didn't cry when I got the text. I didn't call my best friend in a panic. I didn't even put my phone down dramatically on the counter the way people do in movies. I just read it twice, set my phone face down on my kitchen island, and finished making my coffee. The text was from my brother. It said, "Hey, so mom and dad talked it over and they think it's better if Thanksgiving is just immediate family this year. You know how things have been. Hope you understand. Immediate family." I have known my brother for 31 years. I was at his wedding. I held his firstborn son in the delivery room waiting area at 2 in the morning, running on vending machine coffee and absolutely zero sleep. I flew home from Seattle on a Tuesday, burned a vacation day, because his wife needed help moving furniture while he was traveling for work. But sure, not immediate family. I stood in my kitchen in Portland, Oregon, in a house I bought by myself at 29, and I drank my coffee, and I thought, okay, you need to understand something about my family before any of this makes sense. I am the second child, which in my family meant I was the practice run that didn't quite take. My brother Ryan is the golden one, always was. Star quarterback in high school, full scholarship to Penn State, married his college sweetheart at 26, 2 kids, a house in the Philadelphia suburb my parents can drive to in 40 minutes. He is everything my parents pointed out when they wanted to show the world they'd done something right. I went to community college, then transferred, then took 7 years to finish my degree while working. I moved across the country. I dated people my mother didn't approve of. I missed holidays for work. I built a career in data analytics at a mid-sized tech company, got promoted twice in 4 years, and eventually left to consult on my own, which my father called risky and my mother called a phase. I was doing fine. Better than fine, actually. But fine doesn't make for good dinner table conversation when your brother just made partner at his firm, so. The exclusion from Thanksgiving wasn't the first time. There was a birthday dinner 2 years ago, just a family thing, my mother said, though my cousin's husband was there and he'd only been married into the family for 8 months. There was a 4th of July gathering last summer that I found out about through a photo my aunt posted on Facebook. And there were the smaller things, the ones that are harder to name, the family group chat that went quiet whenever I sent something, the Christmas gifts that felt like they were selected in 30 seconds, the way my father asked Ryan about his job every single holiday and asked me, when he remembered to ask at all, whether I was still doing the computer stuff. But this was Thanksgiving. Explicitly, deliberately, with a text from my brother so carefully worded that I could feel my mother's fingerprints all over it. You know how things have been. As if I were the difficult one. As if I had done something. I called my friend Dana that night, not in a panic, just to say it out loud, because saying things out loud is how I process them. Dana has known my family since college, and her response was exactly 4 words. What are they thinking? I said I didn't know. Then she asked me what I was going to do, and I said I hadn't decided yet, and that was the truth. Here's what I knew in that moment. I had taken the week off already. I had bought groceries. I had been genuinely looking forward to it, not to the family dynamics, but to the actual holiday, to cooking, to having nowhere to be. I had a whole week free and no Thanksgiving plans, and I lived in Portland, which in late November is cold and gray and quietly beautiful. And I had, sitting in my email inbox, an unread message from a rental company about a property I've been eyeing for months. A lodge, up on Mount Hood, 8 bedrooms, a great room with 20-foot ceilings and a fireplace you could practically stand inside, a wraparound deck, a full kitchen, a hot tub, mountain views. The kind of place that costs more per night than some people's monthly rent. I had never booked it because I'd never had a reason to. I opened the email. It was available for the full week of Thanksgiving. I sat with that for a minute. Then I started thinking about who I actually wanted to spend Thanksgiving with. My friend Dana, obviously, her boyfriend Marcus, who made the best cornbread I'd ever eaten in my life and insisted on bringing it to every gathering whether he was asked or not. My friend Priya from college, who lived in Denver and had been saying for 2 years that we needed to do a real trip together. My coworker James, who I knew was spending Thanksgiving alone for the 2nd year in a row because he'd moved to Portland for a job and hadn't built his footing yet. My cousin Beth, my mother's sister's daughter, who had quietly texted me the day after the 4th of July photo incident to say she was sorry, she hadn't known I wasn't invited, and that she thought it was messed up. Beth, I should mention, had also been noticeably absent from some recent family events. She and her husband had a toddler and another baby on the way, and my aunt, her mother, had made some comments at a family dinner last Easter that Beth had not forgotten. I texted Beth first. "Hey, I know this is last minute. Are you and Derek doing anything for Thanksgiving?" She replied in 4 minutes. "Not anymore, we're not. What are you thinking?" Over the next 48 hours, I made 11 phone calls and sent a document. The document was a shared itinerary. The lodge rental was confirmed. I covered it entirely. The whole week, every night, every bedroom. I told no one I was paying for it. I said simply that I'd found an incredible deal. I did not post anything on social media. I specifically did not post anything on social media. My mother and brother followed me on Instagram, and I wanted Thanksgiving to happen without anyone in my family knowing about it until it was already over. Dana drove up from Portland with Marcus and 4 grocery bags of cornbread ingredients. Priya flew into PDX on Tuesday afternoon, and I picked her up at the airport, and we stopped at a farm stand on the way up the mountain that sold the most beautiful heirloom squash I'd ever seen. James brought 2 bottles of wine he'd been saving for a special occasion, and when he walked into the great room and saw the fireplace, he stood there for a moment and just said quietly, "Oh wow." Beth and Derek arrived Wednesday evening with their toddler, who immediately ran to the window to look at the snow on the trees and screamed in pure joy the way only a 2-year-old can, with no self-consciousness and complete abandon. Beth hugged me in the doorway for a long time. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. We cooked for most of Wednesday night. Dana had a system for the cornbread that involved specific cast iron and specific timing, and she defended it passionately against Marcus's alternative suggestions, which were also good but different. Priya made a green bean dish from her mother's recipe, and we stood in that enormous kitchen at 11 at night, all of us with wine glasses and different tasks, music playing, snow coming down outside the windows, and I thought, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Thanksgiving morning, I woke up before everyone and made coffee and stood on the wraparound deck in a fleece jacket and watched the sun come up over the mountain. There was snow on the ground, and the air was the kind of cold that doesn't cut you, it just holds you. The trees were still. The sky was going from dark blue to the pale gold that happens before the full light arrives. I thought about my parents' house in Pennsylvania. I thought about the way that table would be set. My mother's good china. The centerpiece she bought at Home Goods, the specific seating arrangement she managed every year like a small military operation. Ryan at one end, my father at the other. His wife Kara across from my mother. The kids in the middle, everyone in their place. I thought about the text. Immediate family. I wasn't angry standing there, I want to be clear about that. I was something quieter than angry. Something that had been there for a long time and had finally resolved into something clean and settled. A decision I hadn't known I was making until it was already made. I went inside and started the turkey. We ate at 2 o'clock. The table sat 10, and we had 9. Priya's green beans, Dana and Marcus's cornbread, roasted Brussels sprouts, mashed potatoes that James made from scratch, pie from a bakery in Hood River that I had quietly driven to get at 7 that morning while everyone was still sleeping. The toddler sat in a high chair and ate mashed potatoes with enormous concentration. Beth cried a little during the blessing, not sadly, just the way you cry when something is fuller than you expected it to be. After dinner, when the dishes were done and the toddler was asleep on the couch under a blanket and the fire was low and everyone was in that good exhausted state that comes after good food with good people, Dana raised her glass and said, "What is this place? How did you find this?" I told her the truth, that I found it months ago, that I had been looking at it for a long time before I had a reason to book it. She looked at me for a second, then she said, "Good reason." I posted 4 photos to Instagram at 9 o'clock that night. I didn't caption them anything dramatic. Just the location tag, Mount Hood, Oregon, and a simple, grateful with a leaf emoji. The photo showed the great room, the fireplace, the table before we'd eaten, and the view from the deck at sunrise. That was it. My phone buzzed 17 minutes later. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. My father, which was unusual. My father almost never called me directly. Then Ryan. Then Kara, his wife, which I genuinely did not expect. I turned my phone, face down, on the side table and went back to the conversation I was having, which was about nothing important and therefore completely perfect. By midnight, I had 31 missed calls. In the morning, when I finally turned my phone back over and looked at it, I had 44. I made coffee again. Stood on the deck again. Snow had come in overnight and everything was white and silent in a way that felt almost deliberate. Like the mountain had done it on purpose. I read the voicemails in order. My mother's first one was measured. She said she saw my photos. She hoped I was having a nice time. She'd like to talk when I had a chance. The second one, 3 hours later, was not measured. She said she didn't appreciate being blindsided, that she'd been worried about me, that she didn't understand why I hadn't told anyone I was going away, that she hoped I hadn't done this to make some kind of point. My father's voicemail was 7 seconds long. He said my name and then said, "Call your mother," and hung up. Ryan's voicemail was longer. He said, and I am going to give him credit for this, that he understood why I was upset, and that maybe the Thanksgiving thing had been handled badly and that it wasn't personal. It was just that things had been complicated lately, and that he hoped I wasn't trying to make things worse by posting on Instagram. That last part he said carefully, like he'd chosen the words. I hope you're not trying to make things worse. I sat with that for a long time. Here's the thing about being the one who gets left out. At some point, you realize that the person being left out has a lot more information than the people doing the leaving. I knew exactly what Thanksgiving at my parents' house looked like because I had attended it for 31 years. My parents had no idea what mine looked like. They had no idea what my life in Portland looked like, who my friends were, what my house was like, what I'd built. They had a fixed image of me in their heads, the one who moved away and did the risky things and didn't quite fit, and they had never bothered to update it. Posting those photos hadn't been planned as a move. I want to be clear about that too. But I'm not going to pretend it was neutral. I knew they'd see it, and yes, part of me wanted them to. Not because I wanted to hurt them, because I was tired of being invisible. I called my mother back on Friday afternoon. She picked up on the first ring. I knew she would. The conversation was long and circular in the way these conversations always are, where the same few things get said from different angles and nothing quite gets resolved. She said she hadn't meant to exclude me. She said it was complicated. She said Ryan and Kara had needed the holiday to be low-key this year because Kara's mother was ill and things were stressful. I said I understood that. I said that understanding it didn't mean I was okay with the way it was communicated. She said I was being sensitive. I said that getting a text from Ryan, not even a direct call from her, saying I wasn't included in the family holiday was not something I was going to call sensitivity. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said I didn't know it would be a big deal. You always seem so busy. I almost laughed. I did laugh, actually, a short, not unkind one. I'm not always busy, Mom. You've just never asked. She didn't have an answer for that. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said what I needed to say evenly, the way I'd practiced in my head on the deck that morning. I said that I loved her and I loved the family, and that I also had a life that was real and full, and that I was not going to keep showing up as an afterthought. That if immediate family meant something, I wanted it to mean something in both directions. That I wasn't asking for an apology exactly, but I was asking for something to change. She said she'd talk to my father. I said okay. Then she asked me about the lodge, who had paid for it, how much it was, whether I was doing all right financially, and I understood then that what had really gotten to her was the photos, not the exclusion, the photos, the fact that I had been somewhere beautiful, with people who wanted to be there, and that it had been visible. I told her I was doing fine. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen of that lodge for a minute, listening to the sounds of my friends in the other rooms. Marcus was doing something with the leftover cornbread. Dana was reading on the couch. Priya was on a video call with her family in Denver. Beth's toddler was awake from his nap and running toward the window again, doing exactly what he'd done on the first night. pressing his palms flat against the glass and looking out at the trees with pure, total wonder. I watched him for a moment, then I got my coat and walked out onto the deck and sat in one of the wooden chairs that faced the mountain. And I stayed there for a while without my phone, without any particular plan, just watching the light change on the snow and letting the cold air do what cold air does when you sit still in it long enough. Eventually, it just feels like breathing. I've been thinking since then about what I actually wanted from all of it. Not from the Thanksgiving, not from the phone calls, from the last several years of trying to be part of a family that kept arranging itself around a version of me that wasn't quite accurate. I think I wanted to be seen, not celebrated, not accommodated at great inconvenience, just seen, noticed, included in the ordinary, unremarkable way that people are included when they matter to each other. The way Dana doesn't need a reason to call me. The way Beth texted me 4 minutes after I reached out because she was already hoping someone would reach out. I didn't know what happens next with my parents. My mother and I have talked twice more since then, and the conversations have been careful and imperfect, and occasionally real in a way that they haven't been in years. My father sent me a text last week, unprompted, which is historic, that said he'd seen a documentary about Oregon and it looked like a nice place to live. That's my father's version of an olive branch, and I know that, and I took it. Ryan and I haven't talked. I have his voicemail saved on my phone, the one where he said, "I hope you're not trying to make things worse," and I have listened to it a few times trying to decide how I feel about it. Some days I'm frustrated by it. Some days I think he actually meant it gently and just doesn't know how to say things gently. Most days I think we're going to need a real conversation that neither of us has been ready to have yet. And that's okay. It doesn't have to happen before it's supposed to. The lodge became something I didn't expect it to become. It became a standing thing. Dana and Marcus are already asking about next year. Priya has told 3 people from college and 2 of them want to come. James sent me a long text in December that started with, "I'm not usually good at saying this kind of thing," and ended with, "That was the best Thanksgiving I've had in probably 15 years, and I read it twice, standing in my kitchen in Portland with my coffee, and I didn't set my phone down after. I held onto it for a while. The photos from that week are still up on my Instagram. The fireplace, the table, the deck at sunrise. I have looked at them more times than I would admit out loud. Not because I want to keep relitigating anything, but because they are true. That week happened. Those people were there. That mountain was exactly that color in the early light. I didn't do anything dramatic. I didn't make a speech. I didn't send a message I later regretted. I just decided, quietly in my own kitchen on an ordinary morning, that I was going to spend Thanksgiving somewhere I was wanted. It turned out that was enough. I keep coming back to that morning on the deck. The snow, the cold, the light on the mountain. The fact that I wasn't angry. People assume a story like this is about revenge. I understand why. The missed calls, the photos, the lodge. From the outside, it probably looks like a move that was calculated to sting. And I won't pretend it had zero sting in it. But that's not what drove it. What drove it was something simpler and harder to name. I was tired of arranging myself around people who had stopped seeing me clearly, and I finally had enough stillness to just stop. There's something I've learned about the way actions ripple outward, and it's not mystical. It's just true. What you put out tends to come back in kind. Not always immediately, not always from the same direction, but eventually. My parents spent years sending me the message, subtle, then not so subtle, that I was the one who didn't quite fit. And for a long time, I accepted that framing. I kept showing up, kept sending money, kept flying home and sitting at that table trying to be the version of myself they were comfortable with. That effort produced nothing except exhaustion and a growing sense that I was disappearing. The moment I stopped, the moment I put that energy somewhere honest instead, everything shifted. Not dramatically. Not in some cinematic way where everyone suddenly understood and apologized. But Beth texted back in 4 minutes. James brought wine he'd been saving for years. Dana stood in a kitchen at 11 at night, making cornbread and laughing, and the mountain was right there outside the window, and it was real in a way that the table I'd been trying to earn a seat at never quite was. That's the thing about integrity, not the word on a motivational poster, but the actual lived thing, the practice of acting in alignment with what you genuinely value. It produces results that hollow performance never can. I didn't book that lodge to impress anyone. I booked it because I wanted to spend the week with people I actually loved in a place that felt worthy of the occasion. The rightness of that decision wasn't something I had to convince myself of. It was just quiet and clear, the way real things tend to be. And I think about the discernment it took to get there. Not intelligence in the academic sense, but the harder kind. Knowing the difference between a situation that needs more patience and one that needs a different choice entirely. I had spent years trying to solve a problem with the wrong tool. More accommodation, more presence, more effort directed at people who had already decided where I ranked. At some point, wisdom is just recognizing that and redirecting. What I'm most proud of, looking back, isn't the lodge or the photos or even the conversation I finally had with my mother. It's that I didn't call my ex. I didn't send an angry text at midnight. I didn't make a scene. I felt the hurt, sat with it, made coffee, and then made a decision that I could stand behind in the morning light. That kind of steadiness, the ability to stay grounded when something genuinely hurts, is something I had to build slowly over a long time out of smaller moments that nobody witnessed. Ryan and I still haven't had the real conversation. My mother and I are somewhere in the careful middle ground between distance and closeness. I don't know how it resolves, but I know that I am not waiting for their understanding in order to live my life fully, and that is not a small thing. The mountain was there. The people I love were there. The light came up exactly the way it was going to, regardless of who was watching. That was enough. That will keep being enough.